Greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
I was talking to the phone, and I realized there are people that are here.
Yeah.
Welcome, Facebook world. Thank you all for attending, community members, students, and online. My name is Matt Houston. I serve as lecturer here at the University of North Texas at Dallas School of Business, but I'm also a community member. I am a member of the Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, which is one of our community partners in this program, and I'm honored to provide you all the second edition or installation of our Money Matters series. As you can see, we have a virtual component that we would love to have your engagement. We have two very great speakers, and then we will hear from our presenting sponsor, one of our presenting sponsors at the end, Chase Bank, just to wrap things up. But before we get started, I would like to briefly share with you the purpose of this program, and I want to acknowledge our presenting sponsor, which is the Dallas Examiner and Chase Bank. One, Miss Molly Belt, who is in the audience here, but she has been a long-time community advocate, entrepreneur, and just publisher of a community paper. Also provides programming so that our community can be uplifted, either through Monday Night Politics, which will start next week, correct, for our May election at the African American Museum. For years, Ms. Belt and the Dallas Examiner have provided ways for the community to be informed of political issues, and this is an extension of that philosophy, the importance of us knowing financial education, not only just so that we can know it, but we can also apply it, not only to our families, not only to things that we desire to have, but also a space where we can build and grow, whether it's starting your own business, whether it's being able to support your family on a long-term planning basis. We want to provide nuggets, we want to provide tools that you can utilize to be able to be a better citizen, a better community member, but at the same time be able to scale so that you're able to not only impact yourselves, but you're able to impact the entire community. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to have a couple presentations, and we will have feedback and discussion from either the audience members or live on Facebook Live. We're on a couple of pages on Facebook Live. I'll be monitoring it on my computer as the speakers will be here and provide us great information. And so without further ado, I want to invite our first speaker. Our first speaker is an associate professor of finance here at the university. Is it associate or assistant?
Assistant.
Assistant.
But you're speaking prophetically. I'm
That's okay.
So
I like to respect titles because I'm just a local lecturer at this school. He's an assistant professor of finance here at the University of North Texas at Dallas. He is the first black PhD in financial planning in the country. He is also actively involved in local and national initiatives in creating development opportunities in areas in historically disinvested areas, and he tours across the country providing seminars like this in financial planning, things of that nature. Without further ado, I'll give you Dr. Ajamu Lovett.
Thank you, Matt, and everybody here, and thank you everybody who's watching online. And I'm doing this using my phone so that I don't talk too long. All right, like the old preacher say, I want to hold you. All right, so I want to have some things that we can talk about just to give you an idea of what's important before we get some even more specific information from our other two guests and some ways to actually act on it. And so I want to start by talking with you about building foundations, right? And any time that you're building anything, it starts with the foundation. It starts with an understanding of planting it on firm soil, right? And it starts with building from there. I think so many times when we feel like we're trying to get ahead, we start trying to build without having a proper foundation because we start to see the trappings of what's around. We see the house. We don't want to work on the ranch level. We want to work on the top level. We want to have all of the elements there. But if you build those elements before you see to the foundation, then what it is that you've built is going to be compromised. And at some point, when strong winds blow, when things happen, where waters rush, what's going to happen is you are going to find that the edifice that you've built, that you spent so much time engaged in and so much money working on, is going to be the thing that washes away and rushes away from you. And so when we're talking about finance, there's this pyramid that's out there. And I know that you've seen these pyramids in general, right? There's some of the structures that have lasted thousands of years. Now, I don't know if any of you have actually been engaged in much building or walking around and seeing what happens when you leave a house alone for 5 years or 10 years or 15. But I've been through some of those neighborhoods. I'm from the south side of Chicago. I've been to Detroit. I've seen places that have had, neglect, right? These pyramids still there after thousands of years. Nobody coming in taking care of them and cleaning them up or any of that stuff, right? Why? Because they're built on a firm foundation, and the design and structure is foundation oriented so that each level is supported by the previous level. So when we start talking about, okay, how do we build a foundation financially so that as we move and progress towards our goals, we have everything we need so that we don't end up falling to the next level? In financial services and financial planning, that first level, that first foundational level, is about making sure that you have what you need. Right? Making sure that you have everyday needs seen to, making sure that the risk associated with whatever it is that you're doing isn't going to negatively impact your life and your financial life and the life of your family. So what things are going to be on there? Well, auto insurance. How many of you all have seen people who have decimated their own financial lives, even as college students, based on making the mistake of not having adequate auto insurance? Either you get pulled over by the police, and now you have trouble with your license that makes it harder for you to work your job, makes it harder for you to get where you want to go, those types of things. Or you get into an accident, and now you have to pay for a car that's no longer usable because you weren't adequately insured. Now, these same ideas extend to things like homeowners insurance, right? If you don't have homeowners insurance and something catastrophic happens to the place that you live, now you're in a position where you don't have the means to pay for that place, nor do you have the means to live in it because it's no longer livable in many cases. Again, these insurance and risk management elements are all around us and extraordinarily important before we start building, that we see to those needs and we undergird what it is that we're building with a strong foundation so that all that we're building isn't washed away. So life insurance, the fact is, at any point in time, someone who you love, someone who is a breadwinner, someone who is in a position to deliver to that household what it needs, if you don't have life insurance, to make certain that if that individual dies too early, the family is seen to, again, a foundational element missing. Health insurance, we have all of the means around us now. I wish we had more, but even if you don't have a job, now you're in a position where you can secure health insurance through the Affordable Care Act in a way that's actually going to give you decent enough coverage so that if something, again, catastrophic happens, now you have the means to see to those risks. Disability insurance. If you can work a little bit, but not in line with what it is that you've been able to do in order to actually bring in that fruit to your family that you've been able to bring in before, disability insurance, of course, another element. You notice what it is that we're looking at with all of these foundational elements? It's all This bad thing can happen. 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 Right? It's about making sure that you see to all of the bad things that can happen before you start building towards what it is that you hope for, what it is that you want, what it is that you have in terms of goals. All of those elements need to be seen to. Now from there we can start to build up. Once we've checked off those boxes and said, now let's look at, we've got the risk angles pretty much covered in terms of all of those elements of risk. How do we start to build? Well, you start by saving. You start to build by making a sacrifice. Sacrifice never sounds good. Right? It never does. Nobody ever feels good about the word sacrifice unless somebody else is sacrificing to give something to them, right? Nobody is typically very excited about that. But it's about making a decision that what it is that you want is more important than the things that you typically buy. Now, that unfortunately is a profound statement, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people get stuck at what it is they typically do, even though they're ready to do something extraordinary. They're ready to build something big. They're ready to, we have grandiose ideas. But in terms of our discipline sometimes, that's where we need a little bit more grandiosity, right? That's where we need to be a little bit more bold. You need to have enough faith in what it is that you say that you want to do, that you are willing to take away from what it is that you usually do, so that you can start to embrace where it is that you're trying to go and that new thing you're trying to get, that real thing that's out there, that dream that is possible. And if you believe it, that's when you're willing to sacrifice for it. So what do you start doing at that point? Well, you start getting FDIC checking accounts, right? These insured things, savings, CDs, things to start pulling money together to move towards that next thing. This is an important part of moving towards and building that next level, because of the fact that the things that happen above that are going to be, they're going to have more volatility tied to them. So you need to have an emergency fund. You need to be in a position where the expenses that you usually have to spend, right, are things that are going to be met with funds that you have built in a way that are going to be accessible when the rain comes. And the rain will come. I wish I could tell you it wouldn't, but that's why you build foundations in the first place, is because the rain will come, the wind will blow, all of these tough things will happen. So you're going to have those elements there. From there, you start to get into things. What you'll notice is about each level and each rung that we move up, there's more potential return associated with each level. You're taking different types of risks because you've mitigated other risks at the bottom of the pyramid and set that foundation well. Now some of the risks that you're taking, you may not be able to recoup all of them, but what you'll find among successful people is, because they have these other foundations, is when something else goes wrong, they can pivot to a new thing. Why? Because they have the resources necessary to do so, and they have built the foundation and the networks necessary to do so. So that next step, what you're looking at is money markets. You're looking at municipal bonds. You're looking at high quality corporate bonds that have good ratings on them. Why are you doing that? You're building up that next level of investment. From the money markets, you get to that fourth step, balanced mutual funds. They give you diversification across all of the different types of industries and market access in a way where you're owning, in part, companies that you don't have to work for. See how nice it is to build a foundation, right? Because now, not only Have you built something that you've worked for in terms of making sure you have the monies necessary to save for all of the insurance and pay all of these things you needed to keep yourself and your family secure? Not only have you started to put money in a position where if something goes haywire while you're trying to build, now you've got something to go to lean on. Now you can start to get to the place where your money is working for you. Now that is a special place to be. That's the place where every wealthy person eventually gets, to a place to where the money starts to work for them. Now you might not be wealthy yet. Most of the time you aren't when you're engaged in this process. But it's important to start the process and start to get your mind used to the fact that ownership is the thing that starts to vault you into new realms, new possibilities. But you have to enter into it after being prepared and being in a position where if things do happen to go sideways, your needs are met. Your family's needs are met. You can stay invested in the stock market when times get bad. Why? Because you have funds at hand to make sure that everything's okay in the meantime. Right? You have a little bit of slack in the line. Your ends meet and they overlap. I don't know how many other trite statements I need to make to get you there, but that's where you are when you do that, okay? So when you have these balanced mutual funds, you have preferred stock, convertible bonds, we can spend a whole bunch of time talking about these particular types of products, but the products themselves are not as important as the philosophy behind what it is that we're doing. These are all things that give you more potential return, but also there's a little bit of risk. The values of those underlying assets change. Now, money markets, not so much, right? But as you move into this mutual fund space, the stocks that make up those mutual funds, those things move around in terms of their value based on the underlying performance of the company. That volatility that you're experiencing is a part of the overall process of being a business owner. And if you own a sandwich shop in the neighborhood, you're going to experience volatility too. Tuesday, real strong. Everybody coming in to get sandwiches. Wednesday, not so much. Saturday, everybody's coming out the club. Like, these things happen with business. They happen in life. They happen in everything. Things move in ebbs and flows. Okay? And so if you have your mind trained to understand the tools that you are using, and you have your financial path laid based on you making solid decisions and starting to lay these foundations, now you can move confidently despite what's going on around you. And you can have comfort in the storm, which is not something that happens to a lot of people without having some level of practice and understanding. But again, it's foundation that lets you do that. From there, you start to look at some of the blue chip stocks. These are the ones that are from companies that have been around for a long time, and you've probably bought something from them, right? The Walmarts of the world, the Gillettes of the world, the places where you buy stuff, the Coca-Colas of the world. You buy and drink and own and enjoy all of these things. Did you ever imagine that you could actually get paid from ownership of these things? Because you can. What is it that's stopping you from doing it? It's just one more rung up on the pyramid. It's just continuing to recognize that you've built to that place once you've actually done that sound building, and now you can experience the growth and opportunity associated with those types of assets. From there, we start to get into a little more exotic things. Okay, you got your blue chip, your collectibles, more speculative stocks in terms of things that can move around, lower grade bonds and mutual funds, right? These are things that might have companies that aren't as strong on average, but do happen to be within arenas where there could be significant growth. And I think this is a place where I could classify pretty comfortably where your small businesses that you own yourself lie. They're near the top of that pyramid. And I think a challenge for people who are building up that pyramid and trying to move there and become entrepreneurs at the same time that they don't have those foundations laid, it's difficult, right? And I'm not saying it's impossible, but these are things as you are trying to formulate your ideas for the companies you want to start, as you are beginning to start your businesses, as you are starting to actually make revenue. I want you to be thinking about these things even if you don't have them yet, because one missing part of the foundation can cause the entire thing to crumble if it's not there. That's why I'm so happy that Matt brought not just me to talk about things on a general level, but brought people here that can actually talk to you about these things on a granular level in terms of what you need to do for your business, and then actually have the banking products necessary to help you meet each and every one of those needs. I always say, and it would be weird for me to get through a lecture without saying it, that people are more important than things, right? All of the stuff that I've talked about, for the most part, has been tools. These are things that you can use to get where you want because of the people that are important to you and they matter, and that's why you want to get there. But what's also going to be a great help in you getting there is the people who are engaged in this process, because nobody can know everything. So people like Veronica who can talk to you about your individual financial literacy and the decisions that you have to make and how effectively you can make them is important. Having somebody from the banking system to talk to you, look, I just got to, there's nothing more frustrating than talking to small business owners during the PPP time during the pandemic. Because there were so many small business owners who said, well, we had to close the doors, or we moved to just doing business this way, or just doing business that way. And the question I'd ask is, what was your relationship like with your bank? And the answer invariably is, I bank with them, but we don't really talk like that. I don't know my banker. I don't know the people at all. Let me tell you, that is a major mistake. When we're talking about building foundations, yes, these individual products as tools are extraordinarily important, but these people who can help you plug in these tools, who can help you access these tools that they might not have access to, these people are the most extraordinarily important part of your overall process, right? The people that you meet, the network that you build, all of these things are going to be extremely important for you and part of what will ensure your success, and then sometimes, in many cases, surprise you. Because a lot of times we are more blessed than we could ever calculate, right? When I think about the life that I've lived and the foundations that I've tried to build and the steps that I've tried to take, yeah, I've made some pretty smooth moves and done some of the right things, but I've also done some of the wrong things. And what saved me when I've done some of the wrong things is the relationships with the people who are around me, the people who I respect and they respected me, and then also a praying grandmother and some other folks that kept the demons off of me too, right? Though all of those elements are necessary for you to get ahead, but that people portion is extraordinarily important. Now, by the time you get to the top of this pyramid, where you're talking about not just speculative stocks or ownership of your own business, but then talking about things like options and commodities and over-the-counter penny stocks, at that point, now you're just playing. you're having fun with that. Now, and I see a lot of people trying to make a living in a life out of what should likely be fun for them with respect to their financial lives. And I'm not saying that trading isn't a great thing. I've known some traders who have been extraordinarily successful. I also know a lot of people who have spent a lot of money that they couldn't afford to spend engaging in something they couldn't afford to engage in. Again, the world is going to tell you things about skipping steps in a lot of ways and telling you can have everything at once without having to work and build towards it. I can tell you, sure, it's possible to get all of these things at once, but the likelihood is that somewhere along the way, and heck, maybe even once you've built up a lot, if you haven't built these foundational elements to the degree they ought to have been built, you've just got a bigger fall coming at the end of the day. All right? So now, because I know I don't want to talk too long, man, I'm going to try to keep it going. The other thing that I want you to understand is not just the elements of building towards something in a constructive manner and doing what's important and doing it in the right order, because all of that matters. The other thing is, what does it look like when someone is actually looking out for you? And that will look like the financial planning process. It may be a business-related financial planning process. It may be an individual financial planning process for you and your household. It may be a combination of those things. But what it's going to involve is a series of steps that are you-focused, not product-focused. Right? This isn't a sales job. This is about people actually talking to you about what you want to accomplish and then helping you engage in the process to do so. Obviously, there are going to be some tools, some products, and all of that that they use to facilitate these things. But if they start talking to you about the products before you start talking to them about the problems, we've got the cart before the horse here. And we're dealing with another foundational issue if that's the case. I would be able to give them a whole different seminar and talk on that as people who are supposed to be engaged in meeting the needs of folks that are out there. But okay, quickly, here we're going to go through what the elements of the financial planning process are. The first one, determine the current financial situation. So there's going to be an element of them trying to define what it is that you have, what it is that you owe, what it is that you spend, what it is that you make, right? And understand your financial situation. If they don't do that, how can they really recommend products and strategies to you that are going to be based on what you want to accomplish, if they don't even know you at a base level? The second, develop financial goals. Now, we all have things that we want to have happen, right? That's a wonderful thing. We all have what I like to call a wish list, right? Great to have. You don't have a goal until you have two elements with it. You got to have a timeline and you got to have a dollar sign. That's when it's a goal. You got to have a timeline and you have to have a dollar sign. When is this going to happen? How much is it going to cost to make that happen? That's when it's a goal, right? That's when it's a goal. And then you can start to take steps to move towards it. Without those two elements, it's just a wish. Take it to Magic Kingdom, get on Space Mountain and enjoy yourself, but you don't have a goal yet. The next thing that you need to do, after you've determined those financial goals, and they are working with you to do that, identify alternative courses of action. There are going to be multiple methods by which you can get to where it is that you want to go. And the professionals that you engage with should be experienced and talented enough and know you well enough to think about some different ways that you can go based on the conversation that they've had with you. Okay? So you want to be able to look at the different types of courses of action that are out there. Next, we need to be able to evaluate alternatives based on costs and benefits to you, the individual, and the business entity or whatever it is that you're working with or about. That's the next step, right? Start to think about what's going to be the best way to go. Look at these different opportunities based on what it is that they can bring to bear and what it is they cost. And you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to assess the risk associated with them and consider the life situations that people are going through, right? Because again, people are more important than things. And I promise you, if somebody gets sick or somebody that you need and love needs something from you, you're probably going to do what it takes to take care of them, even if it puts you in a worse situation financially or pushes you further from your financial goals, right? And so all of these elements have to be woven into your plan and understood. Next, we're going to talk about creating and implementing a financial plan. You need to know where it is that you're going, right? Based on that foundation that's being built throughout the process and their understanding of where you want to go, The creation of the plan you have to be able to accommodate the costs associated with all of the products, the cost associated with spending money on your investment plan and moving it out of the account that you can actually use into a place that it can grow for you. All of these elements have to be able to work with one another in a manner that actually can get you to where you're going, and you have to be able to have the money necessary to fuel it. And then, once you've created the plan, you gotta implement it. You gotta implement it. You gotta implement it. And I said that 3 times, and I'm talking to myself as I say it. Because so many times, we know what it is we ought to do. We may meticulously plan to do it. Do you have any idea how many times that I have mapped out workouts and diet plans and bought new running shoes and bought the equipment to be able to have a great workout and the stuff is set up, folded? I have workout equipment that had never been used. I only started losing weight when I engaged in the process. You gotta implement the plan. Once you implement the plan, then you start to see results. But slowly, real slow, super slow. So slow that if all you're looking for is results, then guess what? You're going to be disappointed all the time, right? If that's what you're looking for is off the bat results, then you weren't paying attention in that whole foundational part, because all of that was super boring. Right? Like all of these elements that we're doing, you're building up to something. And the process of building wealth and doing it in a foundationally sound way, hey, it can be fun once you get used to it, but it's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world. You have to be able to engage, implement, and do the tough stuff, right? But it'll be worth it. I can promise you that. I can promise you're worth it, okay? Now, once we've implemented that plan and started on the road, life continues to happen. And the people who are engaged in relationship with you, your partners is the way that I sort of think of it when we're talking about who you choose to work with you as your financial services providers. These partners are going to be with you and re-engaging with you. And so when things change, when there's a baby born, when there's a new job opportunity, when you have another business opportunity, they're going to look at not just that new opportunity, but how it affects all of the other things that they've already previously talked to you about in your life, and how you can move forward in all of these things. And so the process is a big, continual, sweeping wheel that continues to push you forward. And I think a wheel is a really good way of looking at it, right? Because a wheel is a thing that you can use to transport heavy things, to move great distances, right? To do things in the most frictionless way possible. And the funny thing is, when you look at people who are financially successful, that's often what we covet. It looks easy. Like, wow, they got the money, they got things happening for them, they've got investments working for them, they're in a position where it seems like even when things go badly for everybody, they still have their stuff in order. Why? Because they built it in a foundationally sound way, but they also recognize that no matter what, no matter how foundationally sound we are, the rain that's coming down on those that haven't built foundations is going to come down on us. The wind that blows everyone that hasn't made foundations, it's going to blow for us too. And none of those elements are necessarily pleasant as you experience them. But the mindset that you can have as you can go through these things is a growth mindset. Because you understand it's not the end of the day for you. It's not the end of your progress. It's not the end of your process. And all of what you've done has prepared you for these moments. And when you feel prepared and ready, even when bad stuff happens, your mind takes it and says, okay, expect it. There we go. How do we roll to the next thing to get to where it is that I'm trying to go? And that is what this overall process is about. It's about bulletproofing to the best degree that you can your entire life. And it starts with a decision, and it moves forward with building these relationships, and it will be as good as you make it. So thank you so much for having me, man. Thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't talk too long.
Perfect.
And
No,
enjoy.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Loving. We really appreciate the great words. And as you switch microphones with our next speaker, what are y'all thoughts on Dr. Ajamu's presentation? I think we'll probably have some time for comments and feedback. But if y'all, I know that Chase provided us notebooks. So if y'all have any questions for Dr. Loving, please feel free to write it down, as we will have some time to take questions and comments. All right. Next, I am honored to introduce to you all our next speaker, Ms. Veronica Torres Hazley. I've known Veronica for, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but she is a phenomenal woman who is doing work not only in her community, not only in the city of Dallas, but she's building systems throughout the North Texas region for a better health quality of life for individuals, specifically people of color, and which is her ministry, but she touched people from all over the world. I've known her in the advocacy space as she was the president of YP 214, the same time I was president of the Urban League Young Professionals, and we have been very intentional in ensuring the black and brown communities in the city of Dallas are communicating, are working with one another so that the future of our city is bright for both communities. But she is also a mother. She's also a wife. She's also a successful entrepreneur, having multiple businesses that I would love for her to talk about, everything from yoga to communications. She is that person. I am honored in the Facebook world and the community is honored to have her, Ms. Veronica Torres Hazley.
Thank you, Matt, for that kind introduction, and Dr. Loving. I've taken nuggets and some notes from your presentation, because it's just another reminder of how important it is for us to participate, to engage in a conversation in community when it talks about anything, and just today about money, but it does speak to the understanding of who we are and how we want to move forward, and how do we do that, and it's building a great foundation like that you spoke of. As Matt mentioned, I have a bleeding heart for communities in southern Dallas. I live in Oak Cliff. I'm very proud. I moved from Frisco to Oak Cliff, and most people think I went the wrong direction. For me, it was important, being a Texan girl raised in Austin, to be around culture and community. And my story starts very similar to a lot of the students that attend this university. Living below poverty, raised by my grandparents part-time, and my parents part-time. My parents were very young in age and couldn't take care of us some of the time, and my grandparents had their own business, and so my grandparents raised 8 grandchildren back in the 70s and 80s, and I still go back and dig up those memories to see how they did that. And I share their story, and I want that to be kind of my stake in the ground when I share today. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I just knew that my family had their own business, and I knew that living in a house, a predominantly Mexican cultured house, because my dad always said he was a Chicano, which is different, and I don't go into that demographic of Chicano and Mexicano because that starts another conversation. But my father was living that dream, the American dream, where he wanted to come and partake in the integration of Hispanics moving into the States and becoming more affluent in the American culture. So my grandparents were very much advocates for our Mexican roots that instilled hard work, determination, and family and community. So they raised a lot of us. There were 3 girls and 4 boys in our little circle of blended family, knowing how to work hard, knowing what that meant. They raised the girls in the family to be great wives, right? So I learned how to cook, sew, clean, And that was it from my grandmother. She was like, you're going to be a good wife because you're going to learn these great qualities to serve. And education wasn't a number one priority for us. Of course, me being a rebel, I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't a rebel, right, and took risk on myself. I knew that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to start my own business early on. And my grandmother used to manage the business. She never said that's what it was. I wasn't sure if that was something that she knew she was doing. We all knew that she was the head, and whatever grandmother said, my grandfather followed suit, and my cousins, everyone listened to Big Mama, how we called her, and my abuela. But she would do Friday payroll every Friday on the kitchen table. And, you know, one of us were required to grab the envelope. She would pay all the staff cash and get her calculator out, her yellow legal pad, and she would run the books and had her little ledger. And I never really understood what that was. I knew that my grandfather came home and put money on the table, and she would do that, and every Friday my grandfather would buy beer and we would celebrate that. And that was the party. It was a party at our house because everyone was getting paid. I share that story because it definitely still influences me now more than ever, because I knew that that was the birth of my seeds to becoming an entrepreneur. My grandfather later shared his story before his passing with me, when I sat with him for a long time, and he still, at that time, just recently, he passed away at 72, he still didn't know how to read or write. And I thought, how is that possible? How do you own a business, run a business, without knowing how to read or write? And I just thought that was impressive, and that was like, that showed the determination of what he did and the craft that he had, and he was blessed to share and to make money to feed his family. But it also showed me that he could have been doing a lot better in his business. After 10 years of business, he had to file bankruptcy because he never paid taxes. And I thought, you know, damn the system, the IRS. Right? I thought, I didn't know better then. I just knew somebody was coming after us, and my grandfather, you know, it was a system against him. But I later realized that he didn't know any better. He didn't know how to read or write. My grandmother would just, you know, sign the back of his checks. He would put an X there, and she would run to the cashier check and pay, like, go, you know, take your cash and check. And I don't think she even worked with a bank. And the more I uncovered, the more stories I heard about how my grandfather back then, my older cousin said my grandfather was bringing in maybe $10,000 to $20,000 a month. And I thought, why were we living in poverty? Like, what was going on? But he was paying people. I didn't understand what that meant. But when I look back at it, I really understood. I mean, I really was just in awe of how that worked and the system worked then. And everything that he had done was based on a relationship. As Dr. Loving mentioned, my introduction to entrepreneurship was about community and relationships. And community because my grandmother would take in immigrants who would come from Mexico to the city. They would come to my grandmother's house and they needed a job. And my grandfather at the time was known to give people a job, a place to stay if they needed to, pay them cash, and allow them to build their families and their American dream that way. So community was always number one. Relationships was always number one, because my grandmother knew that to have a business, she couldn't make it just on cash alone. We had to have relationships where we can barter services or start credit at a store next door, or small little things like that that now are huge in my life and impactful because they are my core values. The way that I run my business now is based on the same theory. It's relationships, right? And I know that now that progress moves at the speed of relationships. And when Dr. Loving talks about money and the foundation, for me the foundation was love. It was integrity by the work that my grandfather was doing. It was relationships. And the thing that was compromised was money. But when I saw that too, for me, there was trauma associated with that. I learned that the system's against us. I didn't need a bank, that I can do everything, whether it was under the table paying illegally or not. But that was my introduction to money, right? So a lot of this as an entrepreneur, we don't understand until we're in our own business, and we realize that our relationship, our emotional relationship, our teachings that we're taught in the community or in our families are sometimes the trauma that needs to change and the habits that need to change to create a plan or build a business or to even think about generational wealth, right, and what that means. And what Dr. Loving was talking about was building generational wealth. I'm going to talk about, before you get into that, how you own your own business and start your own business, and the sort of experiences that I had to go through, especially during COVID, as he mentioned, during the PPP craziness. I'll dive into that. But I say all that and set the table because I like to let people know, just as Dr. Loving mentioned, we don't just have success overnight, right? We go through a lot of bad decisions, maybe businesses that open and close. And I wish that I had known then what I know now, that there's got to be a foundation built, and we have to change our thought process around our relationship with money. For me, operating that way, with my grandparents having money, I guess it would be middle class back then, I'm not necessarily sure, and then my mom and dad living in severe poverty, where I would have to go with them and live in poverty without electricity, you know, everything else you can think of. And so I got to see the scarcity and the scarcity mentality of not having money, right, and living in fear and waking up not knowing what you're going to eat, and then going to my grandmother's house and having a spread of food or having abundance of a lot of resources. I think it's super important for us to talk about and to be public and to share that story, because I think that's the first part of an entrepreneur journey, is understanding what your relationship is with money. Because at the part I am in my life now, the way I manage my house money is going to be the way I manage my business, right? As Matt mentioned, I opened my first yoga studio 8 years ago. And I did that while I was working at another place. I used to work for Visit Dallas for 17 years, which is the convention and tourism arm. I got lucky. I graduated from high school. I was the only one in my entire family to graduate from high school. My mom had a third grade or sixth grade education, and my dad dropped out of ninth grade. And I had siblings as well, but I was the first one to go to college. I was the first one to graduate high school, and I was the first to go to college, and I even took a bold step and left Texas to go to college, which is unheard of in Hispanic and Mexican families. Like, for a daughter to leave, to not have support of a family, that was a huge step, right? I understood my passion. I was living in I knew I needed a path to get out of where I was at, so I decided to go to college and pursue a degree in hotel and restaurant management. So my background was in hospitality, but I knew right out of high school that I wanted to own my own restaurant. And that came from my grandparents planting the seed of owning my own business. I knew that I wanted to do payroll at my kitchen table. I wanted to provide because I knew my parents couldn't. For me, that was the vision that I had. So I'll fast forward to moving to Dallas out of college. I went to school in South Carolina and Charleston and Rhode Island for a little while, and then came to Dallas hoping that I'd move back to Austin, and never did. But during that time, I still worked for someone. I still knew that working for corporate America was my career path, but I knew that that would give me the seed money to start my own business. And a lot of banks love that, right? I was working, when I was thinking about my yoga studio I wanted to open, I knew that I had to either take money out of my 401k or apply for a business loan. And, you know, it just so happened to be such an organic thought in how it happened. And then I started to learn more. As Matt mentioned, I got involved in the community. I got on the board of the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber. I started their Young Professionals group, as Matt mentioned. And I started to meet more community people, but I also met more bankers. I met more entrepreneurs, and I met a lot of people that were actually in the trenches building their own business. And they took me under their wing. I saw the good, bad, and ugly. I knew what a P&L report was. I didn't have any idea on financials. My only experience was in hospitality accounting, right? And with that, I probably paid a tutor or something to help me get through that, because I had no understanding of hospitality accounting. But lucky enough, as I infused myself in the community, I had people that believed in me, that had, I guess, the desire to build young professionals up in Dallas, and got involved with the chamber, and there was a lot of resources there. They actually had small business incubators back then, before the deck and all the things that we have now. And I thought, I'm going to start my own yoga. I'm going to open up my own yoga studio. And I did it while I was working full time. So I did it at night. My husband and I decided to move forward with that, and we pursued our financials. We had money in my 401k that I could take out from, But I had great relationships with bankers, and I knew at the time, I think it's Lift Fund, I don't know if it's still Lift Fund, I think Lift Fund's still around. They were having a program around Latino-owned businesses, and they had Eva Longoria promoting how she was giving back to Latinas and starting a business. I didn't need money from a microlender, but I knew that I needed marketing, I needed sweat equity. So I decided to take a small loan out and meet with Lift Fund, understand their mission, and engage with them and use them to give me the money, but I also wanted to use the services they had in marketing Latina-owned businesses, and I knew it was big then. I knew it was big that there was a Latina-owned yoga studio, the first in Dallas. I knew that it was big. So it was just being savvy enough to understand that it is a two-way street, right? The people that we give our money to, the institutions that have our money, there's an appreciation. It's a reciprocity that's going on. It's not, they have my money, they take advantage of it. It's how can we work together? How do we develop that to set us up for success? And I did that with Lift Fund. I ended up becoming like their poster child. People would call me in Houston. They had me on their billboard about my yoga studio. So it was an engagement. It was a great opportunity as a business owner, but also helped me market my business. And it also established me, and it also gave them a poster child to talk about the success on how someone can still, back then it was a side hustle, now everyone has that, a side hustle, but it was like the story told of how you can still follow your dream and your passion overnight, right, and do it at night until you build what you want. So I say all that because it's important. I know Chase is here. I know that Chase has a lot of community outreach representatives out there, and I've met a lot of them, but the number one thing is that you've got to work your side of it too, right? You want to go to your bank, you want to work your community. The success of my business has come from my involvement in the community, my relationships. As Matt mentioned, I am a huge advocate for bringing Black and brown communities together, and I share that, and that's the reason I had a yoga studio, because I went to yoga and no one looked like me. The music that I liked wasn't in the studio, and I saw that there was a need. And I know that health is important. You can't have wealth without health, and health is your wealth. And I thought it was an opportunity for me to get involved that way. And like I said, my yoga studio has been open we'll celebrate 9 years, and I cannot believe it. I feel like we were Forrest Gump in the little boat that made it through the storm, because during COVID, no one's working out, no one's going to a gym. So there were several friends of mine that own gyms and yoga studios that closed down, and I was telling my husband, like, what are we going to do? Oh my gosh. And I feel like we weathered the storm, our studio, and it was because of my relationship with my banker. As you mentioned, the PPP was frightening to kind of go through, but I was banking with Frost Bank at the time, and I had a relationship, and I met her through the Hispanic Chamber in Irving, and I called her up. I'm like, please, and it was the relationship that made the difference. And that's just with everything else. As I mentioned, progress moves at the speed of relationship. I got my PP loan, I kept my staff, and then I was able to turn all my classes online and pivot, right, and become super, super aggressive with my marketing and stayed afloat. And it's a success story, and I still, even now, I'm like, I cannot believe that we're open, and my business is flourishing now because now everyone's worried about their health. And it makes sense. But also, I was fortunate to join the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program that was offered, again, through the Chamber of Commerce, that said, hey, we have this program, but I thought it was for big business owners. I thought my little yoga studio doesn't qualify for that. And lots of times I think we do get insecure about not having enough, not being enough, our ideas are not great. And as an entrepreneur, you're always kind of like scared, right, to take a risk on yourself and on your business. But I knew that my sweat equity and the relationships I had in the community were going to help me go to the next level in scaling my business. So I entered the 10,000 Small Business Program, which took my business, from my little studio to now. I'll be opening a 12,000 square foot facility at Redbird Mall next year, and we'll announce that soon. But we're taking wellness to a different level, right? Thank you. And we're opening another gym in Elmwood in Oak Cliff. So I'm doing that this year. It's called The Wood. But we're taking health and wellness to another level. We're now tailoring it to the communities that we're in. I'm not just doing yoga or CrossFit or an open gym. We're treating the whole community. I like to say that we're bringing well-being back into the community, right? And what does that look like? It looks like collaboration. It looks like financial stability. It looks like mental health. It looks like workplace, right? Maybe giving certifications for people who aspire to be a trainer or who want to teach yoga and things like that. So it becomes bigger than what I started and who I am, but it's influence, and it's actually making communities better in Dallas. And I say all that because the foundation, going back to the foundation Dr. Loving said, you have to have a foundation in place that set you up for success. My foundation was educating myself on programs, educating myself on how to, I did all of my QuickBooks and things like that. Sometimes it's easy to just, outsource that, but I really think that because I was in it, I was doing everything, I was working in my business and on my business at the same time, it really was a game changer for my business. And now I have a nonprofit that's called Hey Chica as well, that brings advocacy, self-care, and leadership programming to Latinas from junior high all the way into professional in their corporate careers, because we need to build a pipeline to help women understand what self-care, advocacy, and leadership means, and then where they're connected from junior high to high school and there's no gap, right? We want to teach them how to be entrepreneurs. We want to teach them how to advocate, how to go out and vote, how to get involved in their community. Everything that I talked about in the beginning of what my grandmother taught me, we want to bring that back down to the communities that need it most. And now more than ever, again, I talk about mental health. Financial status and financial stability is part of mental health, right? We all know when we're broke, we don't feel good, right? We don't know where our next meal is going to come from. I experienced that. But as a business owner, sometimes you don't know where the next payroll is coming from. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're sacrificing our own house money that we pay our bills with to pay our staff, or there's a lot of those things that happen, and a lot of stress that comes with that that's not needed, right? It's just educating ourselves on your plan. What is your goal? And what does success look like, right? For me, it's getting up early in the morning when I have quiet time to meditate, to journal, to instill, I have a 6 and 8 year old, as Matt mentioned, and that's a full-time job too. But they always ask me, like, you work from home now? Because I was working in an office with a corporate job. And I said, yeah, does it? And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, that means I'm making even more money and I get to stay and hang out with you. And they don't understand that. But those are the conversations that need to be had early on at 6 and 8, where I invite them to manage their own money, invite them to participate. They go to the yoga studio and they clean yoga mats. They are in charge of greeting our guests as they come in. They practice yoga. And I think that's really important for you to think about those things when you are thinking about building a business. Think about building a community and building the foundation. And then getting comfortable with your relationship with money, right? Not operating from that fear. I was operating from fear of being poor again, and I wouldn't succeed, and I couldn't succeed, and I didn't see myself succeeding because I was still trapped in a mindset of scarcity. And I think if a lot of you or any of you aspire to be an entrepreneur, I hope that that gives you a different lens, right? We can speak about money on this high level when you have it and it's great and you have fun and you can put it in bonds and trade, and all that is great, but I think it starts with you from the inside. How do you feel about it? What do you know about it? What you don't know? And then how do you get comfortable with understanding that your past doesn't make your future, right? For me, just because I've come from poverty doesn't mean that I have to lead with poverty in mind or not. And if I do get there, I tell my husband, I know how to be poor. So I'm not scared to take risk, right? I understand how to make things happen. I joked earlier about making a spread. Those are unique skill sets that come with resiliency, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you have to practice resiliency. You have to practice self-care, taking care of your mind and your body, because if you're done, your business is done. Who else is going to run your business, right? What is the succession plan? Are you scaling your business? Are you growing? And I joke with my husband, I'm like, I think about that rent at Redbird, 12,000 square feet is something I got to stay up and think about every night. And just now introducing like the opportunity to have investors involved, like that's new for me. It's new for me to understand that other people want to give me money to do what I'm doing, and then to help that money kind of turn into even more money, right? Those are conversations that I had to learn even the last 2 years. That's not something that is taught. And I think in this day and age with technology, there's so many resources out there. Do your homework. Everyone researches everything else. I'm sure I ask a lot of my friends and mentors, I'm like, I bet you can tell me what shade of lipstick is in style this season, but you can't tell me this about your finances or your house. And those are real conversations. We have to be very authentic with our mentees, our mentors, and if you're a mentee and you're a student and you have a mentor, ask them to help you get there. Ask them to have those courageous conversations about, the real responsibility that comes with whatever you're aspiring to be. It's not going to be a smooth path, but you got to get uncomfortable to grow. And for me, it's talking about money and your level of interest, managing, and whenever you're uncomfortable. I know that I'm not good at certain things. I go to the best and ask for some help. And that's the number one advice that I was giving. And when you start asking for what you need, then it becomes comfortable, and then you don't have that fear of not knowing, and success will follow you because you believe that you deserve that, and it belongs to you anyway. So that's my entrepreneur journey. Matt, I don't know if you keep going on. I can go on and on about tell you more details about my business and the ups and downs that go with that, but I think that gives you a little... No,
we'll invite you back. So now, let's get a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Give that to
okay.
To Terry. Thanks, Veronica. Thank you, Dr. Loving. You've heard from an entrepreneur. You've heard from a banker. You've heard from a financial professional, a finance professional. Now I want you all to hear from a banker. This individual, I've met a couple of years ago, and she is someone who is truly seeking out building relationships with the community, not only to establish business bankers, but she is very conscious with reinvesting in spaces that traditionally people of color have not been privy to, and that's understanding the banking system. And she's not only doing this in Dallas, but she's doing this all over the North Texas region. I've seen her in Plano in workshops. I've seen her in her affiliation and our partnership with the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, which is also a community partner of this program. But she and her organization, her company, is the reason why we're able to have this program, with that Ms. Belt and the Dallas Examiner can have this program. And so I would like Ms. Terry Thomas to come by. I want her to talk a little bit more, piggyback more on the relationship aspect. I'm throwing you softballs.
Okay.
And so I want you to talk to us about your role as a community banker. Tell us about some of the community banks that you have in the area, particularly in Dallas and things of that nature. But just overall, just give us your feedback based on what you've heard from our financial professional and our entrepreneur.
Perfect.
Terry Thomas.
Thank you. So, thanks everybody. Thank you online people for joining us. Thank you real life people for being here with us. Absolutely appreciate you taking the time to come out to get this information. So as Matt said, I am Terry Thomas. I am a community manager with JP Morgan Chase Bank. So one of the things that I do is financial empowerment. My primary remit is to go out and teach and empower underserved communities, particularly Black, Hispanic, and Latino. So we talk about budgeting, we talk about credit, we talk about managing debt. I have partners that I work with, my community home lending advisors, as well as our senior business consultants. So when you think about closing the racial wealth gap, what's the quickest way to wealth in America? It's going to be home ownership, and it's going to be entrepreneurship. And so we have a three-pronged approach where you can think of me as Dak, I'm your quarterback, and then I work with our community home lending advisors. And so we understand that the process may not be a yes right now, but what's the pathway to a yes? So it's maybe not yet, but let's get there, as opposed to just no. Because we want everyone to have the American dream. If you want to be in a home, we want to get you in a home. One of the things we have is a $5,000 grant, and it's not based off of income or anything like that. It is based off of census tracts, so you have to kind of see where you live, but most of the city of Dallas is eligible for the $5,000 grant. The whole city of DeSoto is eligible for the $5,000 grant. And then we work with different cities because they have assistance programs that we're able to help you with through our lenders. So we want to make sure that if you want to be in a home, we want to help you get into a home. We also have our senior business consultants. They work with our entrepreneurs. They work with any entrepreneur. You do not have to be a Chase customer to have access to our small business consultants, right? Our senior business consultants. They are able to help you where you are, and the whole goal for them is to help you get to that next level. So if your annual revenue is $100,000, we're going to try to help you get to $200,000. If it's $1 million, we want to help you get to $2 million. So whatever that looks like for you, that's where we're going to work on. So they look at 5 different areas. They may work with you on 2 to 3 different components of your business to help you get to that next level. You graduate in 3 to 6 months, and they say, go fly, baby bird. And you start activating and doing the things that you all talked about, get to that next level. And then if you find, a year later, you still need some help in a different area, then you can come back. We want you to utilize the services, and that's why it's absolutely complimentary. There is no cost for that service. But talking about relationships, first I want to say, Veronica, thank you for the transparency. Absolutely appreciated it, definitely resonated. My why in this last series, I think I talked about it a little bit, but same similar situation of middle class-ish, poor middle class, upper poor, low middle class. Yeah, I don't know how we would describe that, but I was a brownie and absolutely loved Girl Scout camp. However, I was not going to Girl Scout camp if I did not help contribute with those Girl Scout cookie sales. So every year you're looking at like #1 brownie sales, cookies. I was the one knocking on the door because I knew if I wanted to go to camp, I better sell these cookies so that my mom doesn't have to pay too much to get me there, right? And that can be stressful for a child, right? I understood and have always understood the importance of money because it's been something that we've talked about. So when you have that relationship, knowing what your relationship with money is, that will help you to be better, right? If you know I'm not good with saving, well then you already know, okay, I've got to put something in place for myself to save, right? Because our goal is to live well today and tomorrow. So we've got to know first the relationship that we have with money so that we can diagnose ourselves and say, okay, where do I need to work? Where does my foundation need to start? Because I'm really good with spending. I can purchase whatever I need, but that savings part, I'm having a little bit of trouble with, right? So we want to make sure that we utilize some of the tools that we have. And this is what we talk about in our sessions. But there are services that you can do. Most financial institutions have some type of an auto-save program, right? So if you know you're not a good saver, if you don't see it, you don't think about it. So if you have direct deposit, a lot of employers will allow you to split your direct deposit so you can put it into a savings account where you don't even see it, so you're not missing it. And then if you know you are a bad saver, you can go a step further, hide the account online so you can't even see how much you're saving, so that it just happens automatically. You don't think about it. You also have the auto-save features, right, where you can say, every time I get $100 in my checking account, I want $20 to automatically go into my savings. And it just happens, again, you don't see it, you don't think about it, because that's your relationship with money, right? You know that you have a hard time saving, so this is something that I'm going to do. I loved what Veronica said with starting the conversations early. So that was something we had in my household, right? I knew, you want to go to Girl Scout camp? You better start selling those cookies. So that was what it was. But oftentimes in our communities, it's taboo to kind of talk about money. It's like, no, you don't ask Uncle how much he makes, or, you know, how did he do this? It's just like off limits. But we've got to start having those courageous conversations and talking about it, because that's what's going to advance us as a people, as a community, and allow us to start having that generational wealth, because that's what it's all about, right? I want for my nieces and nephews to be further ahead than what I am. It's like a baton in a race, a relay, right? I'm running, but when I pass that baton, they're going to be further ahead than I am. And they can't be further ahead if we don't have the conversation, because how are they going to know? I will say in other communities, these conversations happen. I had a client who his grandson was his pooper scooper. So he started a Roth IRA, because you have to have a job to be able to have a Roth IRA. His grandson's job was pooper scooper. And he started his Roth IRA. He was 5 years old. These are conversations that are being had over the dinner table, but you know, when you know better, you do better. And so these are the things that we have to start talking about. And if we don't know better, to Dr. Loving's point, that's where you start doing your research, and then you start building that foundation so that you can get to the point where you've got your play money and you're doing your options and your day trading and all of that other stuff, right? But foundationally, we need an emergency savings. I love that he said that. What does that look like? I'm glad you asked. So an emergency savings is going to be typically 3 to 6 months worth of expenses that you have in your savings. Now, a typical rule of thumb is if you're single, it's 3 to 6 months of savings. But if you're married with a family, they say 6 to 9 months. But you also have to think about yourself. So whatever is comfortable for you. I'm a Capricorn. 3 to 6 months is not going to work for me. I feel safe and secure if I've got at least a minimum of 9 months worth of expenses in my savings account. Because, as he said, the rain is going to come. You just don't know how hard or how long it will last, but it's going to come. So when you have that to fall back on, your mental health is better, because the stress levels, you know what, if I had to go to McDonald's, I can make it because I've got this in my savings. I've got resources that I can lean on so that I'm not stressed out about what may be happening. But you've got to get there. No amount is too small to start savings. So if you are saving $10 a week, well, it's $10 more than you had before. So save it, celebrate it. You'll start getting endorphins every time you see it. And then you'll say, you know what, I did $10. I think I can go up to $15 a week, or $15 every 2 weeks. Whatever that looks like for you. But another foundation is you've got to have a budget, because you have to know what's coming in, what's going out, so you know what you can do, right? And then you want to think about your debt with that as well. Some people are like, oh, well, I just want to save. I don't want to pay my debt. Other people say, oh, I just want to pay down on my debt. I don't want to save. It's going to be a personal choice for you, but I am a proponent of the two together. So, you know, if it's whatever my extra income is after I've done my budget and I know what's left, you do 20% of that towards your debt, or you do 20% into savings and the rest to pay down the debt. Whatever works for you, but have a plan, right? Because, to Dr. Loving's point, if you don't have your foundation and you take shortcuts, you're gonna get cut short if you take shortcuts. So you want to make sure that your house doesn't fall, you're on solid ground, and that you are doing the little things to help build your financial wealth. When you think about paying down debt, there are two schools of thought. One is called snowball. The other is avalanche. The snowball effect is going to look at the smallest balance of debt that you have. You're going to line item all of your debt, and the one that's the smallest bill you'll put first. And so when you've done your budget and you say, okay, so I've got $25 extra a month that's not going towards my saving, that's not in my needs and my wants, you're going to put that extra $25 to that lowest bill. Once you get that paid, then everything you were paying for that lowest bill plus the $25, you're going to start on that second bill. And then you keep going like that until your debt is paid. That's the snowball method. Then you have the avalanche method. That's going to look at your highest interest rate. Again, you're going to line out all of your debt. Which one has the highest interest rate is going to be first, and then you go from there. That extra $25, you're going to pay first to the highest interest rate. So that's really important. Switching gears, though, going into relationships. Your relationships with your bank are super important, and with your networking, with your community, but more definitely with your bank, because you want them to know they're going to be your advocate. If you go to the bank and something is going on, well, if I don't know you, I don't know your situation, I can't advocate for you. I can't say to the underwriter when he says, oh, well, I don't know about this loan because this doesn't make sense. Oh, well, you know what? His wife had a baby. He took off, 2-3 months. That's why the income was a little bit low for this quarter, but it's back. Everything is good and the time is done with, and he's back on track. But I know that because I have a relationship with you, and I can explain to the underwriter what's going on. I'm your advocate, so those relationships matter. They were talking and referencing PPP, right? At that time, I had just become a business banker. So instead of business banking, I was a data entry clerk putting in all the PPP information. But please believe, the customers who I knew, when I found out stuff that was happening or things that were changing, it was, hey, you need to make sure you do this. Hey, you need to make sure you're aware about this. And so because I had relationships with them, I knew that they would need this information. So it's really important to have those relationships with your bank, and then with the people that you do business with, because the intellectual capital in your network is priceless. You never know who you are working with or that that can connect you to the next person that you need to know. And so it's always good to ask people, what can I do for you? Because that in turn is going to make them want to do something for you as well, right? It's a give-take relationship. And so when you're working, it's oftentimes people are like the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? It's not about that. It's let's grow together and let's build our relationships together. And so as you are building your business and you're making connections and you're helping others grow, they in turn will start to help you grow as well. So, so excited to be here this evening. As I said, appreciate UNT for hosting us here, and absolutely appreciate Miss Molly for saying, hey, we need to do Money Matters. Chase, come on board with us and let's do it together. And because of her efforts and Matt, we are here this evening having all this great information. Dr. Loving, Miss Veronica, all the tidbits and nuggets that they've talked about. Write them down, use them, engage with them. I am at the 3929 South Polk Street location, so it is a community center branch. That means it's meant for the community. If you have a organization and you might need a space to get together, to meet, now it's not an ongoing situation. This is one-offs, right? It's not like every third Tuesday we meeting at the Chase Bank. It's not that, but it is, we want to see and meet and be a part of the community and see what's going on at Chase in Oak Cliff. I welcome you all to come, reach out to me, come engage with us. Monthly, we do financial presentations. Today, we actually had a session on real estate. We talked about residential real estate, and we talked about commercial real estate. And we did that with an organization called Connected Dallas, whose whole process is making sure that entrepreneurs are connected with resources. So those are the things that we're doing with Chase, and especially at the Oak Cliff Community Center branch. We have 7 community managers in Dallas-Fort Worth. So there are 3 in Dallas, there are 2 in Fort Worth, we have 1 in Arlington, and then we have 1 that supports Irving and Grand Prairie. So if you're in any of those areas, I absolutely encourage you to reach out to our community managers. If you are watching online in other states, we have 150 community managers nationwide. So check your city, see if you have a community manager. But please engage us. We want this information to be out. It's free. The only way that we're going to uplift and grow our communities is if we are on a solid foundation and we have that information. And it starts with our budgets and with our emergency savings, with managing our debt, getting homes, growing our businesses, being able to grow that business and hire someone from the community, and then they can get a savings account and buy a home, and it's a beautiful ecosystem when it works. So let's get this information, let's implement it, right? Because just knowing it is not going to get it done. We want to get the information and we want to implement the information. And once we do those things, we'll be able to grow together. So thank you, Matt, for having us here this evening.
Okay. Terry, thank you. Dr. Loving, thank you. Veronica, thank you. Audience members, thank you. Facebook world and social media world, thank you for attending. Before we end, I want to thank, most importantly, the woman, the reason why this exists, Miss Molly Belt of the Dallas Examiner. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Services at UNT Dallas, thank you for allowing us to do this here. I also want to thank our collaborative organizations that are based in the community. The Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, also known as TAC. We have the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Ezra Coffee Company, UNT Dallas Search Institute. They're the organization that allowed us to book this room, and UNT Dallas in general. So would you please give our supporters a round of applause. I want to thank you for attending this event. Thank you all for participating, and please support the Dallas Examiner. They have programs that go on throughout the year. In fact, next Monday, they will start their Monday Night Politics at the African American Museum, 6 p.m. On the dot, where we will have several candidates that will be on the ballot for the May elections in 2023. So please attend. There should be a streaming option too on their website, thedallasexaminer.com, www.dallasexaminer.com. There are also past videos and articles that you all can get various information and community needs from that publication. So thank you all very much. Y'all have a great evening.